Alright everyone, now we come to the European gas crisis. Energy prices here in Europe have skyrocketed, although they did throttle back a little the other day. I know in the Netherlands they did. I'm not sure about France or Germany. Link in the description. This one's for the UK. Their fuel prices have skyrocketed too, and they've lifted the cap for lower income Britons on how much they have to pay. Like there is an effective cap on energy, but they raised it substantially. I think it was doubled. And so now people there are like, well, I'm on a shoestring budget. You know, you're a pensioner or something like that. And now I get to make an interesting choice this winter. I can heat my home to at least a minimal level, or I can eat. I can do one or the other. I'm not sure I can do both. I guess you'll have to have on and off days. You know how they have like even or odd numbered license plate parking days in some cities, and it's kind of a wonky idea. It's to free up more space because of poor city planning. Usually it's, again, government creates a problem and then creates an overly convoluted solution for it. I guess they'll have to have on and off days for energy in the UK now. Probably end up here in the Netherlands as well. France, Germany. The Germans are trying to cap the temperature that office buildings and so forth can be held at during the winter at like 66 degrees or something, so a little bit on the chilly side. And I guess it's Carterism 2.0. And so I feel sorry for everyone, you know, in European countries that have a fuel crisis at the moment and aren't self-sufficient, and I think there are only a few of them. Europe is a big agricultural muscle, a lot of manufacturing and shit like that requires the input of energy, which is far more costly. It's not just natural gas, but in order to push the Green New Deal of Europe, which started before the one in the United States, the idea was, hey, somehow it's more environmentally friendly to import from Russia than to exploit any of our own resources or build up any other form of supply line. Meanwhile, the U.S. has helped to cause the current European energy crisis. The United States under Joe Biden has throttled back energy production. Biden on day one effectively nixing Keystone, etc., and reducing the amount of energy output. For a few brief shining years, we were not only a net exporter, but the biggest oil, coal, and natural gas muscle in the world. Sorry, Europeans, but we can't really ship you that which isn't being made. We're going to need it in the United States. Here's the other problem for the U.S. We have a globalistic economy. There are good and bad aspects to this. The good aspect, if everything is free trade and people are getting along and they're not fucking around with tariffs and stuff, it helps the supply of goods from one country to another. So you can get mangoes in the UK and you can get UK-made jelly in Morocco or something like that. Things flow around. This leads to some intriguing chains of material. For instance, U.S. chickens being sent to China, processed there and then shipped back for some unknown reason, as though it's impossible to process chicken meat in the United States. Some of it is certainly a little bit bizarre, very unhelpful. The flow of fuel comes to mind. But it will also affect other economies around the world. Europe is a big importer of U.S. goods. Some of the European countries do a great deal of trade. If the European countries go into recession, which is now, it's not just predicted, it's being forsworn to happen by virtually every economic outlet in Europe is admitting to that based on the fuel cost. Manufacturing is beginning to slump because it's impossible to manufacture things and actually sell the product because you have to add a massive amount of cost to the product, and therefore there will be less demand for it, especially when your own domestic population has less money because they too have to buy gas or oil or whatever, heating their homes, cooking their meals, etc., etc. It's a big problem. It's going to stretch the energy grid as well. All those EVs I see around here might look a little bit less economically feasible for middle-class families at some point in the fairly immediate future. We'll get past that. So Europe buys, let's say, 20% less goods from the United States. U.S. manufacturing is selling 20% less goods out of the cut that they sell to Europe. That means that their manufacturing gets affected. And all of a sudden you see the debt spiral beginning to form. Now, this is partially because of the massive world debt bubble. Governments for years now have been effectively propping up their economies on fumes, causing various bubbles. Housing bubble, student debt bubble, energy costs, etc., etc., etc. Eventually, this can only lead to some form of collapse. We're already beginning to see the Bidenomic collapse in the United States, which I believe will accelerate in Q3. And they won't be able to deny a recession at that point, by the way. It's not just a mild correction or a V-shaped recovery thing. I think it'll be worse than that and begin to affect employment as well. That will affect Americans purchasing European goods. Europe's hurting. They lower manufacturing due to energy. That affects the input to the United States. And it goes back and forth until it achieves some sort of equilibrium. The problem is that equilibrium is not a pretty sight. The equilibrium is the middle class gets fucking screwed in the entire first world. Meanwhile, third world manufacturing will take a hit too. All of those European and American industries also require input from China and from parts of the third world, the developing or undeveloped world. The demand for exotic goods that are imported from the third world and the cheaper end, so avocados and mangoes and shit, that will begin to decline because people will pinch pennies. Instead of getting avocado toast, they may rediscover a hipsterish love for toast with butter. Maybe they can't even afford the butter. Maybe they start making toast sandwiches like the Britons do when they're, hard up. It's like you travel to England, you expect a full English. What's the full English? It's several pieces of toast and a half-rotten tomato or something. The other problem is this, and I've warned of this as well for some time. Among Western European, most American communities, people in like Australia, Japan, etc., so the hyper-developed, the post-industrial world, people in the middle class especially have grown used to having access to all of those things. If they have a degradation of that the hyperbolic lifestyle, that rather hedonistic, materialistic, mall-going lifestyle, if you take their cafes and their Starbucks and shit away, they're not going to be very happy about that. This can lead to political upheaval of one kind or another. Leftoid movements, populist movements, fucking Nazis and things like that, commies. You're looking at a dark winter not just for Europe. Europe has a huge economic footprint in the world. Its major trade with Asia, with Russia, parts of Africa, certainly the United States, Canada, the UK through its Commonwealth system with multiple other nations. You've got double dealing of Russian gas and oil right now through India and China especially to other countries, which just means added cost because it's less efficient, and it entirely bypasses the blockade because of the Ukraine situation, simply making things, again, more convoluted. Governments create a problem, they create an overly convoluted workaround, and a bunch of middlemen get paid. It's almost similar to how bureaucracy works, by the way, with the welfare system in multiple countries. This is going to have an enormous ripple effect throughout the winter. I strongly suggest stocking up. Buy your gas and your oil ahead because I don't see it going down anytime soon appreciably. If you're enjoying a relatively low price, or if you have some contract locked in where you're paying a certain price, you might want to pay it ahead of time. Just saying. As far as food and other goods, yeah, you should probably stock up a little bit. You should have a pretty good pantry going on. Make sure you have 3 or 4 months supplies on hand at any time if you can anyway. Even if it's just a shelf full of goddamn ramen, at the very least there's food in your belly, even if it gives you indigestion and no real nutritional value. Guess you'll have to buy some multivitamins. Oh wait, their supply will probably be throttled too, so I don't know, go and eat a piece of chalk for your calcium. At some point, people are going to have to reduce their lifestyle in accordance with the WEF's planning. Again, this is a total coincidence. They will have to cut back on the meat. They will have to do some intermittent fasting. By the way, that little infographic from the WEF on Twitter is fake. You can tell because it's a little bit too hyperbolic to be real. I think that's their intent. Meanwhile, the rich in all countries of the world, they'll still be rich. They'll still be on their yacht living it up with their champagne and their caviar and their filet mignon and for some reason lobster. Again, I think people pretend that it's tasty in order to use it as a status symbol. Oh my god, I've got lobster tails today for dinner. Who fucking cares? Just eat shrimp. It's the better version of lobster anyway. That's about all. Peace out.